This month I still haven't played Battletech, but I did play even more other board games, so let's talk about that instead. So we only bought 3 new games this month, rather than every other month where we bought like 12. The first one that we got was Battle Spirit Saga, which is a card game, and we both thought it was pretty fun, but the tutorial that they've got on YouTube is like the most cringe thing. It's all like 2 animated guys talking to each other in very uncomfortable ways, and it starts off with them just talking about how they run tournaments that give money prizes, and I'm like, is that the only thing you think you've got going for your game is that you give money out? It reminded us a lot of the Digimon card game, which we also both liked, probably because they're both made by the same people, at least as far as I'm aware, and it has some very similar issues. So the combat's really weird. You have 5 life each, and if you get hit, you lose 1 life at least. You can actually lose more than 1 life per hit, and you can have like multiple monsters out on the field at once, so it's like really easy to take damage. It's very quick. Like the matches are really quick, and it just feels weird. It quite often just boils down to if one person makes a mistake, they just lose the match. At least the entire games go really quickly because of it. Like we've played a couple of games, they've all gone like maybe 10 minutes. In terms of like the actual combat stuff, there's probably other stuff you can do around it. Like we haven't played very many games, so there's probably more I could learn. The games also revolve around this whole like crystals thing. It's basically like Hearthstone where you get 1 new mana each turn. They're actual like physical crystals, and it's very easy to just knock them all over the place. But the other thing is like you have to use them to cast your cards, but you also use them to put on your cards, but there's also things that make them cost less per card, and it's just like there's quite a lot of maths involving crystals that you have to do all at one go. It's one of the things where like the more you play it, the easier it'll get, but to start with, it's just a lot to throw at you in one go. The little crystals are actually quite nice. Like they'd also make just pretty good tokens for other games, so we're probably just going to use them for that more than anything, but I don't know, like overall, the game's fun, but the crystal stuff feels like a bit much, and the combat is like way too quick. It was fine. We'll probably play it a bit more, but if I wanted to play a game like that, I would probably play the Digimon game over this. The other card game we got was SolForge Fusion, and my first impressions were very low. I opened the box, and everything inside feels so cheap. There's these little cardboard tokens that you've got to like pop out yourself, and they just feel so cheap cardboard. I felt like I was going to rip them constantly. The playmats are also really weird, so you get playmats you don't like to wear to put your deck and stuff like that, but they're just not wide enough. They're cut off on the edges. You get a space to put your graveyard, but you only get like half the space to put your graveyard. Half of it is on the field and half of it is off the edge of the playmat. And it's like that on the 2 sides. Everything's like half cut off and it just looks really cheap. It also seems really complex at first, and to some extent it still is. Once you actually get into it, it's not that bad. We actually ended up enjoying it a lot. I think I preferred this to Battle Spirit Saga, so I would be more likely to want to play this again. But like I say, there's just a lot to keep track of. So there's like 5 lanes with 10 possible placements. There's like really high life totals per person. There's persistent damage to every creature out on the field. There's who has control of the forge at the time, what phase of the game you're in, what cycle of the game you're in, upgrading the cards you play. There's just so much stuff that they throw at you in one go. At its simplest, you play 2 cards per turn, and you put 1 card in each lane. You play your cards like alternately, so like I play a card, and then my opponent plays a card, and then I play another card, and then they play a card, and then we go to combat. So when I said there's like 5 lanes with 10 placements, you can either place them at the front or at the back, and that's dependent on if you've got the forge or not. Also, like some other things, like if a card's like a defender, it always goes at the back. If you put your card at the front, then it can do damage to your opponent, and if it's at the back, all it can do is defend. Then in combat, if you've got a card at the front, it does its attack, and then if there's a card in the opposing lane, it blocks it, and if there's no card, then you just take damage to your life total. It's fine, and like once you get into the rhythm of it, it's pretty quick. And then you do that play cards combat cycle 3 times. And then when you've done that 3 times, then is that the phase or the cycle? Like this is something I'm talking about. Like I've played it a few times and I still keep getting the words wrong. So you do those 3 phases, and then you start a new cycle. And when you start a new cycle, you get new cards based on the cards you've played. You get like stronger versions of those cards. And you've got like a commander, and they can do things depending on what phase the game is in. And you can go through 4 different phases, and once you've been through the 4 phases, the game ends. It's just explaining it. It's a lot. Playing it, the first time was a bit much. The second time was alright. The more you play, the easier it gets. But even then, it's still like remembering what phase and cycle you're in and stuff each time. It's just easy to lose track of. I think I kind of like the actual game, but there's just so much stuff. The stuff surrounding the game, like I say, like the quality of the things you actually get given feels so cheap, it puts me off. But I actually liked playing the game, so I feel like kind of conflicted about that. So the last board game we got was Ticket to Ride, and we got the New York edition. We chose the New York edition in general because we wanted a version from a place we've been to, and specifically because the Japan edition isn't a standalone thing, it's like an expansion to one of the other versions, so the New York one made sense. It reminded me a lot of Traintopia, which we played a few months ago, except it's a lot quicker, a lot simpler, and a lot more fun. You basically just buy contracts to run, in the New York version it's taxi routes, but like usually it's trains, hence the name, to run like taxi routes between various locations in New York. And it requires like quite a lot of planning to try and get your stuff right, but it's also like really quick at the same time, especially with just the two of us. You get points based on like which route you take and stuff, but there's also goal cards. Try and get a route between here and there, and then you can score extra points or lose points actually, based on whether or not you finish it. And that's the sort of stuff where it's very similar to Traintopia, though obviously Ticket to Ride came first. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I will say the board is very small, and it says it can do up to 4 people, and the game was really quick even with just the 2 of us. So I feel like with 4 people, the game would be over very quickly. But for just the 2 of us, it was probably perfect. So I also watched a load more films, and I'm going to give another quick breakdown on my opinions for those, like I did last month. First, I watched Sicario and Sicario 2, and there's like a wild tonal shift between those 2 films. From the outside, they both look like they're similar, but when you're actually watching them, there's such a gulf between them. Like the first one is a pretty grounded story and tells a story it's easy to follow. It seems like it would be a thing that could happen, you know what I mean? Like you could see something. It doesn't feel too insane. Whereas the second one starts with a terrorist attack in the US that ultimately has nothing to do with the cartels, but they use that as an excuse to kidnap a girl to return her to her father to make the dad angry for some reason, and then a guy gets shot in the head and basically resurrects from the dead afterwards, and then recruits his murderer into what I think is supposed to be a sequel to this that doesn't seem to be happening. It was fucking ridiculous. It was not good. The first one is great. I think it's a really good film. The second one is just not. It may as well have just been something completely different. I watched Elysium, which is totally fine, but it's nowhere near as good as District 9. Then I watched Baby Driver, which was also pretty good. I like the way the soundtrack fed into the action and vice versa, but it kind of fell off at the end. I just wish the ending was different. I don't really know how it would have ended, but I just wish it was not what it was. I watched The Raid and The Raid 2, which are both really good action films, but I much prefer the first. The second one gets kind of bogged down in the story, which is... It's not that it's a bad story, but relative to the like fight scenes and the choreography and everything else, it's definitely the weakest part. And then the last thing I watched was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is probably the best Marvel film in a long time, and it's really easy to make me care if most of the characters are animals. This month's game update was a bit of a mess, to be honest. The original plan, which I kind of mentioned at the end of last month's podcast, was to release the original sound effects as a free DLC, but I honestly just couldn't work out how. I looked up guides, but the Steam side of it seems fine. The Unreal side of it, all of the tutorials I found were about making new maps, which those made sense, but they didn't make sense for what I was trying to do, because they basically all required you to make an entire different version of the game and package that, and it seems like way more work than it needed to be in my head, and I didn't fully understand a lot of what it was telling me to do, so I just gave up. Like, I'll probably try again at some point. The idea is that I can do that, and then I've spoken before about wanting to add in extra language options. So in this update, I ended up putting the old sound effects back in and then adding a choice in the options as to whether or not you want to use the original or the new ones. And then on the back end, I've added in a system that will allow you to choose from multiple different languages. It's just that none of the other languages are there. So the original idea was that the DLC would then be the other languages. So that I wouldn't put out my game and like everyone has to download every language when they're not going to use all of them because it just takes up more space. Whereas you can just download the version and then the audio that you want. That sounds way better for me, but I couldn't work out how to do it at the time, so I've done like a version of that stuff. So I've got all the like in-game language options and stuff. They exist. But for 1 right now, there's no other languages. And for 2, I can't work out how to do the DLC thing. But if I can, I will do it like that. And if not, I'll just add other languages in the game when I find people who can do them for me. The stuff I've done now makes my job easier in the future, but it's not exactly satisfying to me. I'm not totally sure where I'm going to go in terms of updates in the future, besides the other languages and stuff that I've talked about. Mostly because I've got a plan for what I'd like to do, but it's the sort of thing where I'm going to spend a lot of time on one thing and then release it when it's done, rather than doing the like monthly updates I've been doing at the moment. So I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do about that right now, but I'll have to think about it. I've kind of realised that this month's podcast is incredibly similar to last month's, and it wasn't exactly intentional. I just ended up doing a lot of the same things. I've also like been really quick recording again, and this month it isn't because I've left it too late, like I usually do. This month it's actually just because it's really fucking warm, and recording this means I've got to turn my fan off. So I'm trying to get through the recording so I can turn my fan back on. As for like videos, most of this month was spent with me fighting a Matsu. I'm glad that it's finally done. It took a lot longer than I wanted it to, but now I can get back to clearing all the hunts that I skipped, while doing the main stuff. Eventually, Sunbreak will finish, obviously, but right now it seems like that's going to be quite a while away. Like, I've still got months worth of hunts left. This week is also the patch week for 14, and I've just finished the MSQ for that. I'm surprised it didn't really end the story. Either 6.5 has got tons of stuff to pack in, finishing up the 13th and setting up 7.0. Or maybe we'll just spend a lot longer with the Void Scent than I expected to. Or maybe they're just going to do a really bad job setting up 7.0. But who knows? Ishin is going to finish just before the end of next month, just before next month's podcast. And then I'll take a break and start the new LP a little after that, as I usually would. I've also still not really decided what to do about streaming. For now, I'm going to keep doing 14 at least weekly. I might add in an extra one now and again, because I've just got a lot of things I want to do. Like, I've been doing all the tribal quests and stuff, but I've got my minor almost to 90, but I've still got all the minor quests to do, so I want to go and do those while I've still got a chance to get the XP from the quest rather than just, like, wasting them when I'm at 90. And the same with my botanist. They're only just at 80, so I'm probably going to try and do all of their quests, and then the Crystarium and Studium deliveries with my botanist, which might be too much, but I think it'll work out. But that's my plan for the moment with those anyway. So the point is I might end up adding in an extra stream now and again just to get all that done, because it's a lot to leave for just Fridays. Starting pretty much with the tall neck video that I did, I've kind of just been like making whatever I feel like, rather than forcing myself to do scripted videos all the time. And it's been good. I like doing that. It's a lot easier for me, for one thing, and I don't feel like I'm going to burn myself out on writing, because every time I've taken a break from making videos for the main channel, it's always been because I find writing difficult. So doing just whatever I feel like, regardless of if it requires me to write something or not, is good for that. And it's also letting me try all sorts of like new stuff. Like, I'd never done an unboxing before, and especially not like I did this one. I had actually previously tried to record one unboxing and it just looked like shit, to be honest, so I never put it up, because also it wasn't particularly interesting. But yeah, it's giving me a chance to like try new things, and it's easier on me. And I'm just going to keep doing that. I've got some scripted videos planned. I'm not totally sure when I'm going to put those up, but they are planned to come out. And then I've got other shit I want to try. Like, I've got like art projects that I want to try and just see. I did start posting on Instagram, like I said I was going to, and it hasn't been going great. It's not like it's difficult. It's a tiny amount more work than I was already doing, but not much. But I've been basically getting like no engagement there whatsoever, so it doesn't really seem like it's been worth it. I'm going to keep doing it because at this point there's no point stopping, but it doesn't seem to be benefiting me at all. And then besides that, I think everything else is just going to carry on as normal. Special thanks to all of my patrons. You can join them over at patreon.com/Holden Gatsby, and for $1 a month you'll get to see what I'm working on early and get exclusive roles in my Discord along with other rewards I might think of. You can also just follow me there if you want to for free, as it's probably the best place to see all of my content as soon as it's available. There's links to the Patreon along with my Discord, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, and all the other podcast platforms in the description for this episode. Finally, don't forget you can email me using podencastby@gmail.com if you've got anything you want to say. Thanks for sticking around. Bye. Special thanks to my patrons, Justin Wood, Hobbs, Koopy Vegeta, and Gunrunner. You can join my patrons at patreon.com/Holden Gatsby, check out my TikTok and Twitter at Holden Gatsby, and follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Holden Gatsby. Don't forget to subscribe to all of my channels. If you want more, you can watch my last video now, but if not, then thanks for sticking around. Bye.